Thank you. All right, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's tribal consultation. Let me move this slide here. My name is William Moore, and I'm with OJJDP's National Training and Technical Assistance Center. First and foremost, I want to thank you all for joining. Before we do begin, I would like to go over a few technical related questions, or excuse me, items for you all before we start. Please note that we are recording today's webinar. Today's webinar will be posted on the YouTube page. Note that if you'd like to download a copy of any pertinent handouts, you may do so by locating the handout pod, where you can click the name of the document and then click the downloads file. That will allow for you to download the pertinent documents that we have for today's tribal consultation. Please make sure that your computer speakers are indeed muted for the event. Note that the audio for today's webinar is coming through the phone line. If you experience any technical difficulties, please feel free to send a private message to the host, or you can contact the OJJDP TTA Help Desk. The telephone number is 1-833-647-0513. Please note that we do have some features here in Adobe, which include the chat box. The chat box will allow for individuals to easily communicate with us. Very simple to use. You just simply take your mouse and you click inside of the open space there until the cursor appears, and you can click it and type your message. So you can feel free to type any message there. Right now, as you all see, we have the speaker sign up, where you'll be able to sign up if you would like to speak. We would like for individuals to please indicate their name, their title, their tribe, and whether if they would like to be on either video or just through the phone line. Now, really quickly, for those of us who are attending, we like to get a sense of who's on the phone and if individuals are joining through a group. So therefore, if you're joining in a group, meaning there's more than one individual with you viewing today's webinar, please help us count. Go into the speaker sign up and please type the number of additional people that are in room with you today. If you're viewing by yourself, there's no need to type anything at this time. You can just type in the total number of additional people in the room with you today. And I'll give folks just a couple of seconds to do that. All right. So with that being said, I will now turn today's presentation over to the OJJDP Administrator, Ms. Karen Hart. Karen, take it away.
Thank you, William. Hello, everyone. Oh, it's good to be with you. My name is Karen Hart, and I'm the Administrator at the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. We also call it OJJDP. Welcome, and thank you for participating in today's Tribal Consultation webinar. I hope you and your families are safe and healthy, and I look forward to hearing how we can best support your efforts to meet the needs and challenges of youth in Indian country. OJJDP and its staff have been supporting tribal youth for many years through the Tribal Youth Program, Tribal Juvenile Healing and Wellness Courts, and pass-through awards from our Title II Formula Grants Program. I know my staff is eager to hear from you as well. I think, is somebody trying to say something to me? No? Okay, I'm going to keep going. Because this is our first consultation and it's virtual, we ask for your flexibility and patience as we kind of navigate through this discussion. We would certainly have preferred to meet with you in person, but keeping everyone safe is a priority during this particular COVID pandemic. I want to thank the hundreds of tribal leaders and representatives who are on the webinar today. We appreciate your time and your input, and we look forward to a productive discussion. Let's see here. All right. I want to give a special thank you to the facilitators of our discussion, Judge Corey Wawasik and Adriana Mitchell, who likes to be called Audrey. In a few minutes, Judge Wawasik will lead us in prayer, and then Audrey will sing a traditional Navajo song. Before they begin, I want to share some background information for you about these two facilitators. First, Judge Wawasik from the Cree tribe served as a tribal judge for the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe Tribal Court from 2006 until 2013. when Governor Mark Dayton appointed her to serve as a Minnesota District Court judge for the 9th Judicial District. She previously served as a Kansas Supreme Court certified mediator and practiced law for 15 years, specializing in Indian law, child welfare, and juvenile delinquency. Judge Wawasik was a founding member of the first joint tribal state jurisdiction wellness court in the nation. She's also a member of Project TEAM, which stands for Together Everyone Achieves More, which helps other jurisdictions create tribal state collaborative courts in their own jurisdictions. She earned her bachelor's degree and law degrees from the University of Missouri at Columbia. Audrey is a Navajo member of the Colorado River Indian tribes. She was selected as one of 12 peer guides in OJJDP's Healing Indigenous Lives initiative, administered by United National Indian Tribal Youth, known as UNITY. The project fosters leadership development in tribal youth with a focus on addressing juvenile justice and delinquency prevention challenges in Indian country. Audrey is a member of the 25 under 25 Native Youth Leaders of 2018 and is currently studying communication and organizational management at Mesa Community College. She's also president of the Mesa Community College Intertribal Student Organization. Thank you to both of you for facilitating our discussion today. Judge Wawasik will now offer a prayer.
Thank you, Karen, for that introduction. And, we hear a lot about what we do and have our experiences, but I want to introduce myself again and say Sibikwe. I'm called Sibikwe and I'm Fish Clan. That means river woman. And I think that who we are is what's most important. So if you want to know more about background and things like that, I think it's in the material. But I want to welcome everyone to my home. If we weren't doing this virtually, I wouldn't have this silly headset on and we'd be eating, but we're not. So Audrey and I have been asked to offer some thought in our own ways. And before we begin, I want to apologize from the beginning and to those elders that are out there in cyberland that I know that there are many of you that can and do pray for your children and your communities and your nations every day. So I'm sorry for getting out in front of that, but we'll do our best to start things off in a good way. An old man that I knew, Wawasuk, always said that you never know how far thought travels. And I hope that the thought that we offer now, that flows out and reaches each and every one of you today, and that you take something away that you can in turn bring to others that you work with and in your families and communities. And hope that we set in motion a change in the trajectory for our children in their lives, that what we can start here is going to help the next 7 generations. Thank you to the one who made everything and to all of my relations for the blessings that you've given us. And I love that word. I love that word "gom." I just have to say that it's everything that's led up to this now. It's all of our experiences, everything, our ancestors, everything that's come up to this moment right now. And when we say Iguian, it's like even more than just thank you. So anyway, so I hope that in the time that we're in right now, right this second, that little bitty word of "gom" encompasses so much. And our individual life experiences, everything that has led up to this now shapes who we are. It's the lens through which we see the world. And to move forward in a good way for our children, we have to start out knowing that. I hope that we can recognize and embrace that, because it means we all bring different tools to the table. We have cultures that are proven to heal, and we know what local solutions work. The Juvenile Justice Reform Act changes the trajectory of what juvenile justice becomes. It's my prayer that together we can shape that future. Together we can reform the face of juvenile justice and the juvenile justice system. My hope is that this consultation is a beginning, and that it's the beginning of a collaborative effort that helps all of our nations break the cycle so that we can heal the circle, no matter where that circle is and no matter who's standing in it. Potawatomis also have a word. It's called Mato. And the way it was explained to me, it's to ask when you're asking for help. There are over 500 people that are registered for this event, and every single one of us has a different perspective. All of us are looking up from our own experiences, and we look at the problems that our nations face from the angle in which we look based on our own experiences up to this now. And so when we've asked the question, I hope and my prayer is that we would be willing to listen to the answer and take what we hear to heart and act on it, because that's what consultation is all about. In our work, not just today, but every day in our lives, can we take these lessons and reform how we take care of our kids, our families, our communities, our nations? Help us in our everyday work to recognize the realities of youth and formulate strategies that take into account the documented effects of trauma on the brain, body, and behavior. Help us to remember that our kids are, after all, kids. Help us to trust that culture heals and that local solutions work. Help us to circle back and pick up what we left along the trail, no matter what our journey may have been, and to use what we find there to help our children, our communities, our nations. Ik miigwech. And now I'm going to turn it over to Audrey, and she has a gift for us.
Yat eshike doshidene she ashi mishle nasana bashishin kana nathi dashache adona sane dashanai. Hello everybody, my name is Adriana Mitchell. I am Navajo and Cheyenne, and I'm from the Colorado River Indian tribes. I'm so happy to be with you all today on this call. I want to thank Corey for that beautiful blessing and prayer and setting us in the right track for this call that we have today. And I also want to thank OJJDP for inviting me for this call today. And I also have a song that I would like to sing to start us off in a good way. It's called Shes Mijone, and it talks about the beauty way within the Navajo culture, and it brings blessings from all four directions. And so I'll share that with you today. Shes Mijone leye, Shes Mijone leye, Shes Mijone leye, Shes Mijone, Shes Hujo heye, Neyo. Tals und Eshe Hujog on shadow Neyo. Shes Mijone leye, Shes Mijone leye, Shes Mijone leye, Shes Hujo heye. Neyo, Tals und Eshe Hujog on shadow Neyo. Ha'at Eshe Hujog on shadow Neyo. Sha'at Eshe Hujog on shadow Neyo. E'at Eshe Hujog on shadow Neyo. Nahakonst Eshe Hujog on shadow Neyo. Shes Mijone leye, Shes Mijone leye, Shes Mijone, Shes Hujo heye, Neyo. Tals und Eshe Hujog on shadow Neyo. Shes Mijone leye, Shes Mijone leye, Shes Mijone, Shes Hujo heye, Neyo. Tals und Eshe Hujog on shadow Neyo. Hujona Hasli, Hujona Hasli, Hujona Hasli, Hujona Hasli. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Wasik, and thank you, Audrey, for that beautiful song. All right, now I'd like to give you an overview of what it is we're going to be talking about today. Go ahead and look at the agenda there on your screen. We're just going to discuss some of the new provisions in the JJRA that might impact practice and work out in Indian country, and we're going to talk about the questions that are provided in the agenda and our tribal youth program. At the conclusion of the meeting, we'll be discussing next steps. As we start all of this, I put our mission slide, the OJJDP mission slide, up because everything that we do at OJJDP kind of fits under or flows through, if you want to think of it that way, through this framework of our mission, and in particular, the three goals that we have, which is to enhance public safety and ensure that kids are held accountable to crime victims, and that we are empowering youth to take responsibility for themselves, for their decision making, for how they behave in their environments, and to help get them onto a safer, more successful and productive path. And so everything that we do at OJJDP, all of the programs we fund, everything we do is guided by those three principles. And of course, you'll see in there it talks about doing all of this in a fair and equitable way. That is our goal in all things. So that's the mission of OJJDP. And then with that, we administer, or through that framework, we administer the Juvenile Justice Reform Act, as it was passed in 2018, December of 2018, and it amended the original Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act that was passed in 1974 and actually created the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Provision. And it did include some new language, some new opportunities for tribes in these amendments. Today, I think we're going to look at or focus a little bit on the Title II funding. Title II is awarded to states through a block grant, and it's to help them administer and support their state and local juvenile justice systems, and again, with the focus on safety and accountability and equipping kids to live productive lives. The requirements for Title II money you may or may not be aware of. There are 4 core requirements: deinstitutionalization of status offenders, separation of juveniles from adult inmates, removal of juveniles from adult jails and lockups, and reducing racial and ethnic disparities. Those are the 4 core requirements that if states are working on those or achieving those things, then they are eligible for, or they can be eligible for Title II money. Here's something new, though, for the tribes. This one provision, this first provision actually we want to talk about in the Act, requires now a tribal representative to serve on state advisory groups. It requires the state and advisory groups to bring in a tribal member, let me put it that way. States with 1 or more Indian tribes need now to include a representative from a tribe or an individual with significant experience in tribal law enforcement and juvenile justice in tribal nations. Some states have already done this, which is wonderful. A great example of this is Minnesota, where Gary Charwood of the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe is currently the SAG chair. He's the chairman of the state advisory group. So Minnesota has certainly led the way. That was in place before, I believe, the amendment was passed. Mr. Charwood was the chair before that time. Natella Shaw of the Shoshone-Paiute tribes is a member of the Idaho Juvenile Justice Commission. That's the name for their state advisory group. And she's chair of the Tribal Juvenile Justice Council. So state SAGs are working on this. They're bringing in tribal representatives to participate on these state advisory groups, and it's just so important. And we encourage everyone to reach out to their SAGs or reach out to us and get the information that you need to make those connections and see if we can't bring the tribal representation to the state advisory groups. The second provision that we wanted to look at here, I think I have another slide maybe, yes, is to expand the types of programs that can be supported with Title II funding. This applies to states and local governments and also to the tribes. What you can do with those pass-through funds. There are now, I think, 23 program areas, which is an increase. I don't know exactly how many it increased, but it's quite an increase in the types of things that you can do with pass-through money. South Dakota, for example, has, let me tell you, states often provide more funding than just that amount that is provided in the pass-through or required in the pass-through. South Dakota being a great example of that. They have almost doubled the amount of funding that they pass through, and some of those funds have been used to pay for a juvenile probation officer are dedicated to offering culturally specific services to meet the needs of tribal youth and tribal justice systems. That's just one example of how states can make use of their tribal pass-through money. We would like your input on how we can support you in making use of these provisions and others in the JJRA. Our facilitators are going to ask you for comments from tribal leaders first, and we welcome input then from others following their comments. I think, yeah, we have a slide here that looks really technical, and I think I'm going to ask William from NTAC to go ahead and talk with you about this process for providing your input. William?
Yes, thank you very much, Administrator Harp. And so really quickly, everyone, this is a very simple process that we will have. Everyone, basically this is a reminder that our facilitator will recognize speakers in the order they appear in the sign-in box. Please be sure to turn off your computer speakers so your sound is only coming through your phone when the facilitator recognizes you. If you would like to offer any remarks on video, make sure your camera is enabled on your computer. Please click the Start button in the gray banner at the top of the video box to start your webcam. Please note that you're on mute, and when you're called on to speak, you can press *6 to unmute your line. Thank you, Administrator Hart.
All right, thank you, William. Judge Wawasik and Audrey, I'll turn this over to you now to facilitate the responses to our first set of questions in the addenda. There may be additional input that's unrelated to the questions we posed, and we're certainly going to allow time for that in the agenda as well. So if you would please, Judge Wawasik and Audrey.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and start off, and I just wanted to remind everybody that if you have technical issues, I think that there's a box somewhere here, maybe was for audience questions, and William is standing by. I feel like a telemarketer. He's standing by, though, if you have any technical problems, and I noticed in some of the chat that people were having trouble hearing and that kind of thing, so be sure to ask that question, and they can follow up on the end there. And so in terms of the feedback, we're, as has already been said, we want to hear from tribal leaders first, and then other tribal folks that are involved in tribal agencies, and then others. And so we'll go ahead and get started, and don't forget to ask for that help if you need it. And then, was there anyone that's, some of you aspiring TV stars out there, I'm trying to see from some of our tribal leaders, is there anyone that's a tribal leader that would like to make a comment either by video or by audio? And let's see, do we have, do we have Zach Dalton? I know that this is for a prosecutor or assistant general counsel. Was there any comment that you wish to make? Okay, and he may just be listening in here.
No, sorry.
Oh, okay. All right, so we'll turn it over to you. And the first question that we're asking, and this is we want to get input on how can the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention best collaborate with tribes on the implementation of the provisions of the Juvenile Justice Reform Act as related to your tribe. And you have up on the consultation questions in this small box here that's to the right of our video where we had the questions, and so that's the question that we'd asked for the input on first. So go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I actually just ran in from court, so I'm a little bit behind.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, and we can get you back in line here. Are you ready for your question now, or we can move on if there's someone that would like to ask a question?
Yeah, if you can put me later on,
okay.
I
Thank you. And do we have Denise? Is it? I'm sorry if I butcher your name. Is it Kinnegak? Or is it Gloria Simian from the Tribal Council on audio only? Did you have? Would you like to provide some input on that question? Okay, let's see then. Do we have Oscar Flores, the Chief Prosecutor? He's on the phone only. And Mr. Flores, do you have any answers that you would like to give us to address this first question of how OJJDP can collaborate with tribes? Okay.
Well, I noticed in the comment section that it says we're all on mute. We might want to unmute folks. I mean, if we did that globally through NTAC to mute everyone, we need to unmute everybody so that they can get in here.
Yes, thank you, because we're not hearing any comments. No, you're not. Nope, we can hear you. What's your name?
This is Oscar Flores with the Pasquayaki tribe.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Flores.
No, I didn't have any comments. I was just responding to the question. I didn't have any responses to the first question. Thank you, though.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and let someone speak up if you can identify yourself. Anyone that has input that they'd like to give with the first question for how OJJDP can collaborate with tribes to implement JGRA.
Hello?
If you tribal leaders first. Yes, go ahead. Who do we have?
Okay. Hi, I'm sorry. My name's Amanda Giron, and I'm calling from the Pueblo of Isleta. And I have our chief judge with me, and she would like to make a comment.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So good afternoon. My name is Verna Keller. I'm the chief judge for the Pueblo of Isleta in New Mexico. We're right outside of Albuquerque. So our tribal court has been working very diligently to establish some systemic changes in terms of how we're addressing issues regarding youth offenders that are either system involved or that are right on the cusp, that are at risk. And so I'm very interested in learning more about how our tribe might access some of these funds. But just listening to your comments earlier regarding the advisory committees or the advisory boards that are, I guess, currently in place at the state level that include tribal input or someone from the tribe, someone from any of the tribes that could represent the tribal needs in that state. Do you know whether or not the state of New Mexico has that type of a board in existence? Because that would be a great mechanism for that type of collaboration that you're asking about. How can OJJDP best collaborate with tribal communities? And so if you're saying that there are boards, advisory boards in existence in the states, I'm not aware of that, and so I'm asking whether or not you know that New Mexico has such a board.
Judge Wawasik, can I say something here?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I believe all states and territories have some form of state advisory group. I know New Mexico does because they were participating state, meaning participating in the Title II process, so I know they have one. I believe Dr. Tanine Bradford is on the line, and she runs our Title II division and may have some more specific information about the state of the New Mexico SAG, but I believe they do. And I believe we have contact information for you. Go ahead, Tanine.
That would be great if we could get that, because I think it would be, it would really serve the interest of our youth, Native youth in New Mexico. We've got 22 tribes. And so we are currently in the process of working with the state Children's Youth and Families Department in establishing some protocols for notification to tribes when our youth come into our system involved outside of our lands, and that's for all the tribes. So it would really enhance this effort, and I think it would also speak to the mission of OJJDP and the Reform Act to to kind of collaborate with what we're doing with the state CYFD and this SAG. And now I'm not sure under what department in the state that this board exists. So I would really be grateful to get more information, and I think that's a step toward that collaboration that you're asking about.
Great. We will absolutely provide you that information. I don't have it at my fingertips right now, but we will get you that information.
That would be
and which agency runs it.
Okay.
And I think that would be, it sounds like that is, would be one really important way that can both support involvement on representatives and also how to implement, how to collaborate. Are there other tribal leaders that wanted to provide some input on the best way to collaborate with tribes? Some of the needs that you have? If you can just identify yourself, we'll have you speak up. Okay. And do we have, all right, any other tribal leaders, whether you wanted to hook up through video or just by audio to provide any input about collaboration? And really, I think that collaboration covers a lot of things. We talked, and the second question is about the representatives on state advisory groups. And so was there anyone else on that wanted to provide input about the state advisory groups? I know that Audrey and I had talked about sort of sharing things, but I think really these questions sort of flow one into another. So maybe we'll open that up to see if anyone has any answers to that question or input you wanted to give regarding the state advisory groups. Audrey, I'll let you see if there's anyone that wants to answer any questions.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I believe there is someone.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Chief Nathan Barker of the Squamish Tribe in Western Washington. So I think this, this is your first gathering like this, and if you could create a site that each state and each tribe can go to, and they're affiliates with them, and communicate that way, because we're going to learn by, not just our experiences, but by the rest of the tribal communities' experiences out there in dealing with the public, especially with the stuff that's going on nowadays, recently in the news and stuff. So I think that the more we can globally reach out as a nation, within nations, and share our information, if we could come up with a monthly letter or something, or a call in every so often, just to make sure we all stay in compliance with this, we can share our experiences and what we're doing or what we can learn from others. So it's just let's work on this all together. They're our future.
Those are great ideas. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
If you look at the OJJDP.gov website, we have an interactive map on there. You can just click on the state that you're interested in looking at. When you click on the state, then up comes all that information that you just requested, the state advisory group members, the designated agency, and all the programming funds all the grants from OJJDP that come into that state, and all the active grant programs. And you can click on them and find out all the information about the current funding in your state, so that you can tap into those things, tap into that information. As you so accurately said, we're all in this together, and we all need to see how each other, how we're all responding to these things, and good ideas. But I would first stop for me to recommend to you would be OJJDP.gov, and then look for the Title II or Core Protections label and click on the interactive map. Just click any state in the union, and you can find the information you just discussed.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else that wanted to provide any information on the first questions of how to collaborate, and also supporting involvement on these state advisory groups? Do we have other tribal leaders? How about, I see that we have some other people that are registered that work for tribal organizations that are otherwise involved with tribes. Anyone want to provide some input from their perspective? And,
I believe we have Gloria Simian.
Okay, Gloria, and you probably have to unmute if you're on mute. Gloria, are you there? She may be having trouble
If
with
you're
it.
on the phone, I think you have to press *6 to unmute.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, this is Gloria Simian. I'm with the Ojojjamut Native Council in, we're the Native Village in Bethel, Alaska, and I'm looking at the consultation questions, and it seems that answering one kind of touches on the next, and I'm going to try to put as much as I can into responding to the first question on collaborating with tribal communities. Our problem, our barrier, our challenge within the state of Alaska, I think the sheer number of tribes in our state is so overwhelming that the state of Alaska just can't seem to grasp the fact that there are 220 plus tribal nations within the state, and we are deserving of every bit of cooperation, collaboration, and respect. It's been a barrier to us and our ability to provide the services we need to our tribal citizenry when this relationship with the state of Alaska is so adversarial and conflicted that we have a hard time understanding why the state has gotten these Title II block grant funds as pass-through funds. It's just making it very hard and difficult for us with another middleman to access these funds, and their reluctance to deal with us in a good way. So regarding tribal representation, with that number of tribes in Alaska and the different regions that we are located in, we have 12 different regions that are very culturally diverse. And one representation on this state advisory group is not going to help us. I believe it would cause more conflict and division within than is necessary, and we need to have representation from at least each of the regions to get that equity there. And as far as having culturally specific services and programs, this also needs to be addressed with the diversity issue. One area might be totally different. Each tribe is different. Each tribe is different. You can't boilerplate us. So those need to be considered. And also, I don't know what kind of pressure you can put in from the federal level, but definitely that it needs to be impressed on the states that we are in this together, and we need to work on win-win situations rather than putting up barriers to make it harder. Thank you.
That's such an excellent point. And Gloria, I wonder if you have anything that, or suggestions for things that OJJDP might be able to help to increase those partnerships and be supportive. I think that, definitely, I think that I agree with you there. What are there other specific things that you think you need to help build those partnerships?
Just having access to those tables is going to be major, and looking at tearing down those barriers and making sure that there are win-win situations. We have a vested interest in keeping our people out of this revolving door that the Western society calls justice. We want rehabilitation. We want to get our people out of the system and become productive and prideful Native people. And we do not want our young women to end up another statistic in this violence against women that our state is known for. It's a shame. So we need to be at every table where these decisions and funding mechanisms are being put in place, and not make it mandatory for the state to include the tribes. Not advisory, but mandatory that the tribes are at every table. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Gloria, it sounds like really to OJJDP to help to provide assistance for getting people to the table so you can get those conversations started, if I'm hearing correctly. So thank you for those comments. We have Stanley Johnson, who's the from Mississippi Band of Choctaw. I think that you had indicated you wanted to make a comment by phone. And are you with us? Would you like to make a comment? And if you're on the phone, Mr. Johnson, you probably have to hit *6 so you can unmute your phone. Okay, I'm not hearing Mr. Johnson. We also had a request to speak from Tia Grisham from Mississippi Band of Choctaw. Ms. Grisham, are you there? Would you like to make a comment by phone? And just wanted to remind people that they may be on mute if you're trying to say something. How about Vivian Corthius? Do we have Vivian Corthius? Vivian, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I do have some prepared comments, if I may.
Please do. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Vivian Corthius. I serve as the Chief Executive Officer for the Association of Village Council Presidents. So I'd like to thank you for holding this consultation today. The Association of Village Council Presidents is the largest tribal consortium in the United States. We serve 56 federally recognized tribes located in western Alaska. Our tribes are the 48 villages along the Kuskokwim River, Yukon River, and Bering Sea coast in an area the size of the state of Washington. Our 48 villages are not connected by road to each other or to the rest of the state by a road system. The main transportation during the winter is snow machines, vehicles on an ice road, summertime boat, and weather permitting, small plane throughout the year. The AVCP region has identified public safety and its related issues as the #1 priority for our region. The population of our region is approximately 27,000 people living in villages anywhere from 50 to approximately 1,300, and then of course the hub here in Bethel of over 7,000 to 8,000 people. We have a very large region, and our median age of our young people is less than 25 years old. It is important that we position our young people for success. This includes minimizing their involvement in the child protection and juvenile justice systems. It also means making those interactions positive and empowering. When considering how tribes can best implement programs supported by the Juvenile Justice Reform Act, it is important to remember that tribes must build the necessary infrastructure to support these programs. While we need programs focused on prevention and intervention activities for youth, tribes must also be able to fund basic needs like tribal courts, court clerks, judges, tribal court facilities, public safety officers, to sustain justice programs for our tribes to succeed. Some of the challenges include hiring full-time or even part-time tribal court personnel. Some tribal courts are entirely volunteer-based and struggle to find available space to meet in their communities. At the same time, tribes struggle to find sustainable funding to hire and retain community-oriented law enforcement officers in our villages. The Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention and all of the Department of Justice programs can increase the implementation and success of the Act provisions in rural Alaska by supporting basic tribal justice and public safety infrastructure and needs. Funding the proper infrastructure and support for tribal justice and public safety programs will allow tribes to use and expand the Reform Act programs that have been proven to work, such as wellness courts, circle sentencing, youth and elder programs, and healthy families for our youth. AVCP supports the work of all of our 56 tribes in our region. We desperately need the proper infrastructure so that the framework needed to make programs funded by the Juvenile Justice Program work to improve the quality of life in all of our villages and tribes in our region. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. And it sounds, when I hear you talk, it sounds like the experience that you're going through is so much like tribes in rural communities in a lot of places, and that sounds like really one of those basic needs that you're identifying is just that basic infrastructure so that your tribal justice system is able to operate in the best way that it can. And and I wanted to remind people too, maybe if people have gotten on late, about how to submit comments, and we have an ability for people to help us gather some of the answers to the questions that OJJDP posed in the paper that went around for registration. And certainly we'll make sure that everyone has the ability, if you have longer comments that you wish to make. I think it's very important that we get that input so that can be heard. And so I know that there's some comments that were made, and I'm seeing some comments that came through about states accessing Title II pass-through funding and about accountability for that, and to make sure that that goes through. And so, Administrator Harper, is there anything that you possibly wanted to address about what's being done to hold the states accountable on this pass-through money in support of making sure that it gets to the tribes? Because I'm seeing a couple of comments about that.
Well, not the easiest way, but certainly one thing that can happen is if tribes are not receiving their pass-through, then they need to notify us, and then we can work with the state to figure out what the problem is and address it with them. We audit the states, and we audit what they're doing with their funds. For Title II, for some years, a decade or more, there weren't audits of states. There were maybe 2 or 3 a year. At one point, there was a year or two where there were maybe 8 states per year audited, but in recent years, it was no states audited in the course of a year, and that really creates a problem, and because it just kind of creates an environment where nobody's checking behind SAGs to make sure that the funds are spent properly. Since late 2017 and 2018, we have stepped up to 15 states a year are now audited. So we are out in the field in the state. You can expect a visit, an auditing visit from us once every roughly 3.5 to 4 years. And that, I think, is a huge help in finding out what's going on. Our Office of Audit Management, and I don't want to misspeak here, but I believe they also have a role in auditing. And certainly, but again, the best way is if a tribe is not receiving their money or if they have a question about the funds, they've got to reach out to us and let us know so that we can get behind it and find out what's going on and correct it if there's, you know, if we have that ability or that authority, and just find out what's happening. If we don't know about it, we can't fix it.
Thank you. And is there anyone that wants to address maybe specific barriers that you've experienced to accessing those funds that OJJDP needs to be aware of? Is there anyone that wants to talk about any barriers that they may have encountered? Okay. What about, and again, I just want to remind you of the *6 in case you're on mute. Sometimes it takes the audio a little bit of time to catch up. So what about, with regard to those Title II funds, are there specific things that you think that OJJDP needs to know as far as helping you to access those funds? Is it not knowing that they're available, or is it lack of being able to apply for the funding? Are there particular things that you think might be helpful with accessing that Title II pass-through funding?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, thank you. I'll put my name in the speaker box. I didn't know if this would work. This is Carol Justice, and I work with the Northern Arapaho tribe on the Wind River Indian Reservation, and I'm a retired tribal prosecutor there for both tribes and have worked for the tribes of Wind River for over 25 years. Wyoming is not a participatory state in OJJDPA. It was for about 3 years under Governor Sullivan. Actually, I'm the one that wrote the application for the state of Wyoming at that time for it to participate. So it is not. It's the only one of your 50 states. So therefore, there's your barrier to Title II monies for the tribes. The Northern Arapaho tribe and the Eastern Shoshone tribe are both on the Wind River Indian Reservation. Any assistance the Department of Justice might make in encouraging the state of Wyoming to re-enter the Act, I truly believe it's a situation of will, not can't. So that's the biggest barrier. And again, they are a non-participatory state. Also, I respect very much the comments from the folks from New Mexico and Alaska, and I also would suggest that to make state advisory groups respectful of the government relationships, I would suggest perhaps having tribal governments put forward names for those advisory groups, and the more the merrier, because as the folks have already mentioned, tribes are very different. They all deserve their voice, and so however that could be accommodated would certainly be the best thing. Thank you for listening and taking my call.
Thank you. While we have you, do you have any suggestions for how OJJDP can help your tribe to collaborate, or any of the other barriers that you're facing to remove those?
There has been the SAG in Wyoming, the non-competitor. They received the non-competition grant, non-participatory state grant. Sorry. And so they have come to the reservation to hold meetings. They have occasionally had American Indians on their group. Actually, how I ended up in Wyoming in 1981 was the first non-participatory OJJDP grant ever to hit Wyoming, and it went to Wind River Legal Aid at Fort Washakie, Wyoming. The tribal legal aid was the applicant. And so there's been relationships, but again, Wyoming does not pull down the monies. They do not, therefore they cannot pass it along. One suggestion that I do have, because years ago as prosecutor I tried to, can we, the tribes, apply for those monies in the face of the fact that the state will not. And there was no provision for tribes to do that. So that's another possible option, is if, say, Wyoming doesn't, or any other state pulls out of the act, that tribes can then receive those funds direct. Because I agree, the more direct route rather than going through the state is the best route. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I think that we had, is it Leticia Miller, Vice Chairwoman? Did you wish to make some comments? I think you wanted to appear by audio. Do we have Ms. Miller? Okay, we'll see if she gets her audio there. And I'm curious, and I know that a lot of what we're talking about is writing grants, and having written a lot of grants myself, that I always felt like sometimes I was trying to make a culture and a way of life fit a grant solicitation. But we have Cynthia, is it Troop from Shoalwater Bay Indian Tribe. Is there anything from that perspective, from the grant writing perspective, that you wanted to identify as areas that tribes might be able to get some help? Ms. Troop? Okay.
Can I just say one thing here as folks are working out their technology? It's, as it relates to the pass-through, I didn't want there to be any confusion that somehow states have to write a grant or apply for pass-through funds from the state. They do not. That is simply money that the state has to pass through to the tribes. It doesn't, there's no process there other than just simply the pass-through. The tribes don't have to ask for it. I don't remember the speaker's name, the former prosecutor who spoke just moments ago, is exactly right. If the state doesn't participate, opts not to participate, then those funds don't go to the state. The law requires that those funds then are offered to nonprofits and local governments as recipients of that amount of money, that allocation, that is then used to further the 4 core protections. And states don't even have to, they participate if they choose to. They submit the application. They go through the process of becoming compliant with the 4 core protections. I mean, there are a certain number of strings associated with Title II funds, but then if they don't participate, that money is offered, as I said, as a competitive grant to nonprofits and locals. And we're sitting here, and I'm just not certain, but I believe I'm not sure. I think tribes can apply for that funding, the non-participating fund money. I'll have to verify because I'm just not sure. I don't want to mislead anybody, but I'll ask and make sure. But I know it's nonprofits and units of local government. So let me see if that includes tribes.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm here now.
Okay, go ahead. You could identify yourself.
This is Cynthia Thompson, grant writer, Shellwater Bay Tribe. To be honest, I was not familiar with the Title II funds. I am very familiar with the OJJDP TYP funds and have applied for and received those grants in the past. I did quickly look up to see how much it is allocated in these grants in Washington State. It looks like to me it's $14,000. And to me, that would be a good supplement in some ways, but so many of these programs are very cost heavy in trying to respond to these issues. So I need to do more research into the Title II. I know that the TYP funds have been very helpful, and being able to apply directly to OJJDP for those funds has been a pleasure. So if that becomes a possibility for tribes to be able to apply directly, I think that that would be very beneficial.
Thank you very much. That's it. Appreciate your comments. And I think that we had is there Linnell Blackhawk from Winnebago Tribe from the Tribal Court? I think you may have indicated that you wanted to make a comment. From your perspective, is there any comment that you had on the questions that we're discussing? And I don't know if there's, don't forget *6 if you're on mute. All right. And we have Sherry Ann Moore from Rosebud Sioux. Is there, from Lakota Tribe, is there anything that you wanted to say? Any input that you had? I think I'm looking at our speaker sign-up sheet, so I'm picking on people. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Oh, go ahead. Yes, there you are.
I think maybe I accidentally got put on the wrong speaker. I'm signed in. I'm actually I am a member of the Rosebud Tribe, but I'm Deputy Director of DOJ's OVW Tribal Affairs Division. So I'm listening in for the content. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So,
okay.
Great call so far. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have Andre Parker from Mashantucket Pequot? We'll pick on law enforcement here. So any input that you wanted to give?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Did you have some input? And we're not really addressing our questions in any order, but if there's any input that you wanted to make sure OJJDP gets while we have time here.
I just know that they've been a good resource for us here in Connecticut. We've had kind of a changing of the guard in the past couple of years. So we're trying to get ourselves back on track now. I've gone from non-tribal to tribal law enforcement in the past 7 years. I went to tribal law enforcement with the Mashantucket Pequot Tribal Nation. So we have our own challenges here that we're working on. We don't currently have any representation on the state SAG. I was unaware of that part of it. So I'm going to relay that on and see what we can do about getting that changed.
Thank you. From your perspective, is there any assistance that that OJJDP could give to help build collaborations or those tribal state partnerships?
I just knowing that they're there and that we can have the contact is the most important part. I think the biggest part for us now is knowing that in order to get any part of the funds is that we have to have someone on the SAG, which I didn't know.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I think that we also had I believe, Shailene Tansea, I think I'm saying that right, from the Morongo Band of Mission Indians from the Healing to Wellness Court. Do you have any comments that you'd like to make from your perspective? Shailene may be muted here. Let's see. What about, do we have Tricia Poncho from Cushetta? think we have you on the phone only. Were there any comments that you wanted to make? Okay. I'll just sort of throw the doors open here. I know that we have a lot, with this many people that are registered. If you have some input that you wanted to give, we'll just kind of take first come, first served. We've got about 6 minutes left between before we wrap up this first section. And again, I wanted to remind everyone that this is a work in progress. You know, we're trying to figure out the best way to get input, and it's very important that OJJDP hears from you what you need to be able to access this funding and to build those partnerships. And I think that hopefully the input that we're able to provide to OJJDP then could use to adjust, to look at how the assistance that you need and the grants in the future. So kind of open up the floor. Do we have anyone else?
Hello?
Yes. Okay, Carol?
Yes. Hello, thank you.
I believe we have someone,
I wanted
Carol
to comment
Justice.
on the pass-through item. Generally, the census is the pass-through amount. Years ago when I did the grant, when Wyoming was in, the governor and I discussed it using tribal enrollment figures, and that's what was allowed at that time. And I do suggest that tribal enrollment figures are much more accurate than census, and definitely more accurate than BIA labor data, which is many years behind at all times. So if that type of an adjustment could be made, I do believe that that would result in larger pass-throughs simply by rule if the tribe would be able to offer its enrollment data versus or whichever data source might be the highest. And I would recommend that since the pass-through portions are so small. And Ms. Harp is correct. Tribes can apply for the non-competitory or the non-participatory state grants, but I don't believe that they can apply for some other funds, Title V or whatever, that you have to be participatory state in order to be able to get additional monies. But that's old knowledge on my part. But yeah, it still would be very difficult, I believe, for tribes to put in a competitor, non-participatory state grant application, since it is written primarily not for tribes. But it is open. It is open to both now. So you are correct on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments.
Jeff Wasik, can I just clear something up here about the other types of grants that are available? We're going to get to that in the second part of the consultation. But Title V funding and our CTAS funding and all of those other things are open to tribes, state, local, and tribal governments. Across the board, people can apply for. But we'll cover that a little bit later in the consultation. But I love but this suggestion about using enrollment figures, I have not heard that before, so I'm very grateful for that input. And let me see what we can do with that.
Thank you. Well, we have about 2 minutes and 45 seconds left. Do we have other people that would like to provide some input?
I do. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. Who do we have?
Okay, great. Right. This is Rhonda Harjo, and I'm with the Creek Nation and Mississippi Choctaw. I used to work on the Hill, and we worked on a number of provisions dealing with OJDPA and the Tribal Law and Order Act. And some of those provisions were included in the reauthorization a couple of years ago, and many weren't. One of the things that we did discuss was tribal participation in the SAG. And I can't recall off the top if that actually got included as part of the requirements of the state plans. But if it's not, then, I would recommend that perhaps OJJDPA host some kind of a meeting with the SAGs where you can discuss the benefits of tribal participation and how that might be something for states to start doing now. If you look at the provisions that are in the pending Tribal Law and Order Act reauthorization, I believe it's S210, that's still in the Senate right now, there are provisions that talk about how tribes can be partners with in various ways with the state. So I would recommend that you look at some of those, and perhaps if you cannot, as a matter of law, require it as part of a state plan, then start recommending and suggesting and hosting meetings with the SAGs to include tribes as part of their advisory groups.
Great point.
If there is some kind, you did make it into the law.
Like,
it is a requirement now.
It's a mandate?
Yeah.
Okay, well then I guess then if it's a mandate, then aren't you mandating it? Aren't you guys mandating it?
It was part of the 2018 reauthorization, and that states with one or more tribes within their boundaries have to include a tribal member or somebody with extensive experience in tribal practice, tribal work, doing something with just extensive knowledge of the tribes in that particular jurisdiction. Extensive knowledge of the tribes. At any rate, yes, it's now required. So
and it sounds like that.
How did you mandate it? How would you mandate it? Wouldn't you, as part of approving their state plans, say, okay, now, do you have somebody yet? Or are you going to wait until you audit them?
No, it's part of the application process. It's part of the application process to apply for the money. It's in there.
And it sounds like that's one of the things that's included in the reauthorization, that may be something that OJJDP, that may be a gap that we've just identified here, a real opportunity to build some of those collaborations.
So maybe you need to educate the states on these right now on how they can do it. Is that what you're asking now?
I think you've identified a way that is definitely a barrier and a gap that that tribes need help with to make that happen. So I think that's definitely an area that we need to explore. Well, at this point, we're going to have to kind of shift gears a little bit. And again, this is kind of a new process, and this is the first time that we've started this conversation, so OJJDP can get some input. Really want to encourage people to follow up with written comments, because I think it's important that they have that information. But we're going to move on and talk about the tribal youth programs and get some input on those. And so I think that Administrator Karp has some comments that she wants to make to lead us into the next section.
Right here, let me see where we are. I cannot see what that slide is. No, I'm sorry. I'm not sure which slide is up at the moment. Maybe that's it. It's so small, and I am really having a hard time seeing that far away. But at any rate, first of all, thank you all so much for participating in the first portion of this consultation. Your input was wonderful. It was right on the mark. It's the information that we need to figure out the best way to facilitate the flow of funds from our programs to you, and to how to support you in your work with tribal youth. That was really helpful. So now we have some other funding that we make available to support the federally recognized tribes in their efforts to prevent and reduce delinquency and provide fair, beneficial system for American Indian and Alaska Native youth. We participate in the Department of Justice's Coordinated Tribal Assistance Solicitation, that we call that CTAS for short. You might be familiar with that. CTAS encompasses 9 purpose areas that tribes can apply for through just the one application. That's why I believe CTAS was created in the first place, to try to simplify the process of applying for funds, to make it easier for tribes to apply for funds. So now just through the one application, you have access to these 9 purpose areas. OJJDP's purpose areas are number 8 and number 9, and they support the tribal juvenile healing to wellness courts, and the Tribal Youth Program. Purpose Area 8 is the Healing to Wellness, and 9 is the Tribal Youth Program. Over the years, we've supported a lot of innovative programs and services through CTAS that tribes have in the past identified as being really critical and helpful for young people. In particular, CTAS funding supported the creation of the Healing to Wellness courts, where state and tribal partners help youth get substance abuse treatment that aligns with tribal values and culture. And CTAS also supported diversion and after-school programs, summer camps grounded in cultural approaches, truancy prevention efforts, and some boys and girls clubs. Now, again, not sure. Oh, here we go. I can see that. All right. Let's see. We have applicants from tribal communities for the CTAS grant, specifically the Tribal Youth Program, but we receive very few applications for other types of OJJDP funding opportunities, and that's a little bit of what we were discussing before. Tribes are eligible, with rare exception, tribes are eligible for all of the funding that we put out. It's state, local, and tribal governments that can apply for our funding. And we receive very few of them. Most of the tribes don't apply if they are not tribal specific. That's kind of what we're seeing in our applications when they come in. Our goal is actually to ensure that tribal communities are aware of and apply for all of these funding opportunities, not just those specifically targeting or maybe making available just for the tribes, but for all of the money that is available out there. We have other sources of funding to support services and programs for tribal youth. We put out a solicitation to support the creation of tribal children's advocacy centers, and we created a specific tribal category in our new delinquency prevention solicitation. So we have those out there. Let me see what else. All right, I'm sorry. That was the slide, I think, that explained quite a bit of that. We also support the Tribal Youth Resource Center, which provides training and technical assistance to help tribes develop, expand, improve, and maintain their juvenile justice systems. And in 2012, we began funding the Resource Basket, an Alaska-specific training and technical assistance center. This particular TTA center is building the capacity of tribal communities across Alaska to address specific needs and challenges of youth of those who work with Alaska Native youth. We also have a long history of supporting American Indian and Alaska Native youth leaders. We held our first Tribal Youth Summit in 2010 and learned so much from our discussions with tribal youth from across the country. The feedback we received from those summits led us to expand the week-long leadership camp into more comprehensive, ongoing leadership development initiatives that have been funded since 2013. We've partnered with Unity for this work, and as we mentioned before, Audrey is one of the peer guides supported through that initiative. Having said that, though, we are here to listen to your feedback, both on the work we've already done, but as well as the programs and services that you think we need to provide going forward. What do we do? How do we improve what we're doing so that we are a better support to you? Our facilitators are going to lead us through 3 questions that will relate to these particular topics. And in the previous section of this meeting, as we did then, they'll ask for comments from tribal leaders first, and then a welcome input from others. Judge Gowasik and Audrey, I'll turn this back to you.
And I think in this section, it seemed to work well with us sort of looking at all 3 questions rather than each one individually because we have a limited amount of time. So I'm going to turn it over to Audrey, and she's going to lead us and get input on a discussion about how OJJDP can encourage tribes to apply for discretionary grant programs and what would enhance public safety and ensure youth are held accountable in your communities, and how your programs, existing programs and support can be provided to help with innovation. So Audrey, I'll take it away. I think.
Yeah, so if we have anybody who would like to put in their input, please identify yourselves and we'll have you speak on some of these questions. And again, the first question would be, what actions can OJJDP take to encourage tribes to apply for discretionary grant programs that prevent delinquency and victimization?
So I'd be curious from maybe if there's anybody that's involved in some of the Healing to Wellness course or some of the other programs that are innovative ideas and things. What kind of support do you need to be able to access these funding sources? What about training and tech? Oh, go ahead. Yes, who do we have?
Hello.
You're cutting out a little bit.
Yeah, Spritz Gunlick from Kipnuk, Alaska. I'm working on the Healing to Wellness Court program here. It's for young adults, and we don't have any programs for juveniles who get into trouble. One obstacle here is that we don't, like, there's only one person authorized to apply for grants, and that would be the tribal administrator. But working on this Tribal Healing Wellness Court project, I think my only comment is that a lot of tribes aren't probably not getting the information, or they're just not getting involved. Maybe because the application process is too long, or maybe they have auditing stuff problems or something.
So it sounds like maybe some assistance with applying for grants, some technical assistance. Would that be helpful where you are?
Yes.
Okay.
So I need to find money for my program, like for potlucks and prizes for participants in a Healing to Wellness Court, stuff like that, but I'm just not authorized to do any of that.
Okay.
So that's one obstacle, applying for the grant, I guess.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that is working either for a program or a tribal leader that wants to talk about other barriers that you're experiencing in being able to access these funds? So maybe we can talk a little bit about accountability. And I know that with all of our different tribal nations, we all have different ways. We all have our aunties and grandmas and people like that that hold our communities and our families accountable and that sort of thing. It's different everywhere. So what types of programming would help to enhance public safety and that accountability for your tribe or for your program? Because I think when we talk about accountability, we get there by different roads. What would help to promote that accountability in your community that OJJDP needs to know about? Is there anybody that's involved in a specialty court program or law enforcement maybe?
Hello?
Yes, who do we have?
This is Leticia Miller. I'm the vice chair for the Pascanta Band and Nomlaki Indians. I was trying to do comments on the screen, but they wouldn't go through, so forgive me. We're not as into it as far as some other tribes. We're still in the beginning stages of trying to figure out options for our members and other natives in the community that we serve. And right now, the only thing that we've been able to do is try to create a relationship between the tribe and the local governments, you know, our government-to-government relationships that we're trying to create, and reaching out to, I've reached out to the district attorney, I've reached out to the jail here. We had social services come in. I was trying to get this group together to see what services they offered and the services that we offered that they didn't, how we could complement each other. And the biggest roadblock I get is that it's always up to the judge. The judge is, you know, the judge has the last call on how our members will receive services, and that is even with the juveniles. And it's frustrating because they'll go before the judge and they'll say, you know, my tribe has funding available for me now to get me help, instead of sending me to jail. And because of the past, they just say, no, we don't think you'll finish it, and they send them to jail or to juvenile hall, and without the tribe being able to come in and dictate or help dictate the service for that member rather than the county.
So do you think that it would be helpful that one thing that OJJDP could be, and maybe in terms of technical assistance, is to get people together to have those conversations? I know being a judge, sometimes if I know what's available there and if I know I have everybody at the table, so do you think that's one area that would be helpful?
Yes, and helping tribes figure out a way to create an MOU with the county, or, you know, and because I know that they're open to that relationship. I've met with them, but I don't know how to create that relationship or the MOU and how to even approach that.
Right. Sometimes it's hard to even just get started, I know.
Right.
Okay. So are there any other things along those lines that may be helpful? Because I think a lot of that is getting the right players to the table, and there's a lot of really innovative things that are going on different places. Is there anyone that wants to address maybe a way that if for innovative programs that you have that are sort of local solutions to local problems, what could OJJDP do through these funding sources to help promote that? Anybody want to tackle that one? We're going to start calling on people.
This is Denise Kinnigack with Uvasaki Native Council. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes. Good afternoon.
So, like Gloria Simian, one of our tribal council members stated earlier, we're in a really rural part of Alaska, and I know that we've talked about being understanding of the culture. I think some of the funding needs to be less restricted and allow for us to utilize our cultural knowledge and be able to teach our kids about food security and how to kind of go back to being self-sustainable within our families. You know, a lot of the services that we see currently right now are Western, and it's really hard for children and families to understand and navigate these systems, programs, and services. So if, like, ideally, ONC, we would like our fish camp to be funded. That's where we go and traditionally subsist. those type of cultural activities are very restorative. It's already built into our Yupik culture to, it's something that we call, I think it's the Yuyu. It's like the circle of life. You know, those types of teachings need some sort of funding, preventative funding. We get told a lot, is this best practice proven? And, you know, the Western way of proving what's the best practice is really difficult. And we already know how to serve and restore the youth through our Yupik cultural activities and teaching. So it would be great to have, you know, the OJJDP office come up here to Bethel so you guys could kind of get the feel for what we're saying when it comes to being culturally connected, because one of the things that we see is our youth are disconnected, and, you know, we want to pull them back into our family units and our cultural teachings and bring back that identity, because that's where the strength comes from to move forward in a good, positive manner. So looking at kind of changing the prevention funding to being very culturally appropriate, maybe not having those expectations of it has to be Western best practices or anything like that, because, you know, here within our tribe we have a curriculum called Healthy Families, and it's a 12-week long class where we meet once a week, and it goes through the whole life cycle, and it's incredibly amazing to see children and families engage and the outcomes. But these sort of homegrown curriculum and programs, it would be nice to have additional funding. When you go into our state system, I think the detention unit here in Bethel, which is a Bethel Youth Facility, at times is culturally semi-relevant, but for the most part it's Western. So when we have kids that are in the facility or going through probation system, they can't connect. They don't understand. And I'm a former juvenile justice officer, so I've worked here within my community under the state, and then as well, and then I switched to tribe side, and I really feel like this is where it's at when we're talking about restorative justice and keeping kids intact with their families and culture, and, you know, becoming healthy. I think I don't know if the state would be able to, you know, transition to be culturally relevant, but tribe side, I think we have the capability of doing that. It's just we need continuous funding, not grant development funding. It needs to be, I would prefer it to be compact funds rather than grant funds or block grant funds, just because we get these programs built, developed in our region, and then it's just a development grant. It's really difficult to find local funding to meet those program needs. So kind of an uphill battle. We do as much as we can on our own without federal funding, which, you know, I feel like if we had a little avenue to where we could get these funds compacted and continuous, we would be more successful in working with our youth and our families.
So part of what I'm hearing about, do you think it's helpful if there were consideration of funding for site visits or some of that cross-site and cross-agency communication so we can all learn from each other?
Well, I think the same way AG Barr came up here to Alaska, I think for everybody to truly understand, you know, how unique Alaska, the Western region specifically, it would be great to have the Office of,
oops, somebody's got a great ringtone.
I think somebody put us on mute.
Sorry, we're fixing that in the background here. My apologies, everyone.
I'm not sure if everyone can hear me well.
All guests have been muted.
Trouble with my audio here. I can't hear you.
All right, thank you for your input. Corey, we can hear you just a little bit. Okay, I don't think Judge Corey's speakers is working, so if anybody else has any more input about the following questions that we were discussing earlier. I believe Danica Brown had some insights that she would like to share with us as well.
Danica, do we have you there? Well, in case, maybe, Danica, I just want to remind folks, too, of *6 to unmute your phones. And Danica, do we have you there? Okay, I think I saw that on someone's name, is there someone from the Yurok Tribal Court? I know that there's a lot of innovative programming that's going on there. If there's anything that maybe you wanted to talk about for the programming that you got going, if there were any barriers that might have been helped through some of these things that we've been talking about. We have
Hi,
somebody
this is
there?
Monica. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Sorry. There's like 3 buttons. So I'll be brief. So my name is Donica Brown, and I'm the Behavioral Health Manager with the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board, and also the Project Director on the Northwest Tribal Juvenile Justice Alliance, which was a planning project that we got funding through the National Institutes of Justice that we just completed a needs assessment with the tribes in our member tribes in the Northwest, which are the 43 tribes in Oregon, Washington, and Idaho. And I noticed that some of our partners on the alliance are actually involved in this webinar right now. But I just wanted to share briefly, we conducted an 18-month study to look at the primary issues that were kind of impacting our tribal community as far as juvenile justice issues were concerned, and there were 2 primary findings that came out. One is around data surveillance and tribal people not being accurately tracked within the juvenile justice system and what those things look like. Obvious jurisdictional issues across the 3 states are really challenging. And then the other one that I'm hearing echoed throughout this webinar is a major concern for our tribal communities was being able to access community or culturally based activities in the juvenile justice system, as well as when tribal citizens are being released from custody, tribes being able to have access to work with those youth and families to engage them in that work to support their tribal citizens. And in the state of Oregon, we have been really lucky because when kind of the federal government was really about 20 years ago pushing, the funding of only evidence-based practices, there was a group of tribal people and prevention specialists and treatment providers in Oregon who started doing work around what they call tribal best practices, and there's been a lot of work and support of tribal best practices in the state of Oregon. The state of Oregon acknowledges those as equal to evidence-based practices. Funding for those happen, but it's really kind of set for, those protocols are set in place for Oregon and not other states. And so, our committee and in the research, what we found was that across the board, whether it was youth stakeholders, tribal stakeholders, juvenile justice organization stakeholders, all agreed and acknowledged that culture is preventative and should be funded by federal governments in a more substantial way, and what I'm also hearing from other participants on the webinar is that is a concern. In Oregon, our tribal partners, primarily Dr. Caroline Cruz and Dr. John Spence, have developed an adaptation tool to adapt or to develop tribal best practices. And in the state of Oregon, we actually have 23 tribal best practices that we are able to fund through Medicaid and insurance and things like that. So I just wanted to leave it up. The two primary concerns are obviously data surveillance, and also data sharing. We are sovereign nations and we own our data, and that is also a hindrance in applying for funds many times with federal agencies. I don't know if that's specifically true with OJJDP, but I think that that's a consideration. And then being able to fund and provide funding for culturally based, tribal-based practices for our communities. We do have a report that we just finished, and I'm certainly willing to send that out to anyone who's interested in looking at those findings. Thank you.
Thank you. So for those programs that are incorporating culture in the foundations of your work and have some really innovative ideas that are going, what kind of support do you need in the funding when you first sustainability or for ongoing operations? What can OJJDP do to help?
Well, I think that a big issue or barrier is what funders define as what is rigorous and fidelity, and that we need more flexibility in defining what those two things are. And like I said, with Dr. Cruz and Dr. Spence have developed kind of a tool and protocol to be able to define those from a tribal perspective, but we need organizations, primarily funders, to acknowledge and support those tribal best practices and fund them. We believe that our knowledge and our practices are time immemorial, are rigorous, and have fidelity within our own communities, but because tribal, it's hard to prove evidence-based because our numbers are just not, we don't have enough numbers to justify an evidence-based practice. So that automatically leaves us out of those loops or out of those funding sources. And the adaptation of a Western model to a tribal best practice is not always appropriate or culturally sensitive. And so I think just, expanding the definition of what an evidence-based or practice-based or tribal-based practice is to allow for tribal communities to be able to do things like they were talking about their fishing camps or their hunting camps or canoe journey or any of these other things that we've been doing. And we've heard this from youth too, is that they really are just thirsty for that cultural connection, but resources are so scarce. and providing those resources and providing those positions and working with. What we also find is that in Oregon and Washington in particular is that when youth enter a facility, a state facility, their access to traditional activities and medicines get impacted, right? Because they don't have access, they can't use their traditional medicines like sage or tobacco or these things because it's considered contraband. But creating a way, in Oregon too, we're working on a state policy to be able to work with the Oregon Youth Authority so that cultural liaisons can go into the facilities and work with tribal youth in utilizing those cultural activities and cultural medicines. So just being flexible and aware of those kinds of things, I think would help if our funders were funding those and being aware of the rigor and the fidelity that actually we are being able to prove. So it's just, those are my thoughts about that.
So are there, thank you for that input. So are there other tribes or folks that are representing tribes that that you need help with in terms of being able to document what you're doing for sustainability and to show, as you said, that we know what works, but moving it from what we know works and a promising practice to what's recognized as best practices in the outside world here is help to maybe to do those evaluations, recognizing that it's not the number of people that you're serving, but the impact that you're having. Anybody else that has any input along those lines? And Audrey, I can't hear you. I don't know if you're on mute. Yes.
Can you hear me now? Okay, and I believe we do have some questions for people who were not able to speak up on the phone. One of them is from Sheila Bave Sign, I believe. I'm sorry if I say that incorrectly. But she asked, can any urban 501c3 Native American Indian programs apply for this funding?
And I think and that might be a question for Administrator Karp. I don't know in terms of, and that might be identified another another area for assistance is to let people know who actually can apply for funding. Is it just a federally recognized tribe? Are they Native Americans can run 501c3s? I don't know, Administrator Karp.
It will always be listed in the solicitation who's eligible, and most of the time it's always going to be states, local governments, tribes, 501, nonprofits. It might not list out the types of nonprofits, but it'll just say nonprofit organizations and a variety of things. It's always listed in the solicitation who is eligible, and it varies from solicitation to solicitation. So you'll just have to look at those. When you see a funding stream that looks like something you might want to participate in, just right on the first page, right up at the top, it talks about who's eligible, and you can click on it and find out.
Thank you. One question that I would throw out there too, in terms of the pots of money that are out there and some of these discretionary grant programs, and we're all familiar, as we talked about, with the CTAS funding, and again, having had my grant writing hat on, it takes us so much time and everything to get geared up to get our CTAS grants in. But there's a lot of other pools of money that are available out there that tribes aren't applying for. And so what can OJJDP do to help tribes to be able to apply for those?
Or are you asking us?
Yes.
Or are you asking the tribe?
I see that we have
our participants on the line. Yes. What helps?
Absolutely.
Yes, I see that we have Annette Leva. or Annette Leva?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
So yes, I am with the Gloria Simian, and I am the administrator for the Attendance Achievement Program, and I know that I have participated in some webinars and conferences as far as innovative practices within court systems and navigating our government systems. So we have developed a system where we identify truancy issues through our neighboring schools because we don't have K-12 schools on our reservation. But we know that the effects are challenging and they impact all of the other elements that are taking place in our children's lives. So we utilize that partnership with our court system, and then the court system that exercises the autonomy to connect them to a diversion program within the tribe that's connected to the education department that is a web of services that wrap around each of our families and work with them within 6 to 9 months to address any issues. This year is, I believe, our 6th or 7th year since the inception of the program. And, you know, coming from, I worked in education over 15 years with the tribe, and, you know, counting with the school district, it's been well over 20. And knowing of a program, we know what needs to be done, we know what practices work, and to be able to create that structure and move forward to identify and not have fear if we are doing what's right, but to at least gauge and measure was something that we could not hold back on any longer. And this is why we created a structure that was a pilot that we could grow and develop every year and navigate through that, and taking effective practices from tribes, effective practices from other entities, other schools, and try to resonate that uniqueness within our community. The challenge I see is the data collection and being able to capture the qualitative and quantitative measurements to be able to reflect accurately what our youth need specifically. And it is a whole lot of what I'm hearing right now, and it's connecting to families. It's the cycle of our generational traumas, and it's that connection and reconnection to culture. And especially when we are looking at, in our perspective, education is one of the biggest keys for our people to overcome challenges and to be self-sustainable, to be able to address and empower families when they too have suffered a lot of experiences within the educational system. There are so many measurements that we are not capturing, and then to be able to have it in a system that effectively does that, I would say would be a great benefit to a lot of us that are spending so much time trying to do the work. And that alone, you know, would take another person or another 2 people just to identify those factors. And then in addition to looking at innovative practices, I know that Bakoyaki was able to be identified as one of the federal Tawahi tribes because of its practices that are, you know, innovative and outside of the scope of a lot of the structured grants that we see. And the Attendance Achievement Program is one of those metrics because of the way we work as a family. We work as a family to help our families, and I really enjoy conversations at the tribe sometimes regarding the Attendance Achievement Program, because sometimes we talk about it really doesn't fit in a certain program, and I'm like, well, that is probably we replicate our families because they don't fit in a program. They are whole and they encompass everything in that wraparound system. So to be able to network and connect to systems that are non-traditional in a sense of evidence-based practice, but that are very cultural when it comes to the way that we work and live and help our families. And I know that
a lot of the speakers and facilitators are asking a whole bunch, what do you need from us? And I'm thankful that you're doing that. And I just want to give my gratitude to you. So I feel opportunities like this, it's providing opportunities like this for us to gather and to create the momentum that we see that's happening in the nation right now, and to know that we have been addressing and trying to get this moved for long before. We see a lot of movements happening now as far as working together for youth. So I thank you all for your time, and hopefully you can kind of translate all of the goodies I've shared.
In terms of grant funding and innovative programming, things like that that you need assistance with, is there anyone else that wants to address maybe some of what types of programming that you want to have funded, or if there's barriers in the existing funding to some of the things that we know work that you want to start in your communities? Any barriers there that anyone wants to talk about?
I think we have Corey Danner from Barrow, Alaska.
Do we have Corey there? Are you on mute maybe? Okay. Are there others? In terms of, maybe we can switch gears a little bit to talk about in terms of things that would enhance public safety in your communities. And I know that so much of what I've seen and we've heard so much throughout this conversation is about our culture and traditions where we live, and that it might not be huge numbers that we necessarily deal with, but that's where the healing is, and you can really change the trajectory there. So are there other ideas for improving public safety that you think your tribes or in your work that OJJDP should be aware of? What kind of programming could be offered? Oh, we haven't got somebody there? What about, do we have anyone, for instance, that's, I think I saw some names of people that were involved with juvenile programming. I think is Corey Danner, I know we just tried, do we have Corey yet? Anybody else that's working in facilities, for instance, that wanted to talk about some of your needs or ideas for programming? We've got about 6 minutes left, and I think if one of the things I know that there's a lot of really innovative programs that are out there where tribes are infusing their culture and trying to make changes that way. Anybody want to talk about some of the barriers? And we've heard about a few of those, but what are some of the barriers that you're encountering for applying for your local programs? What kind of programming and funding opportunities do you need to be successful and carry on? Anybody that wants to tackle that one?
Are you able to hear me?
Yes. Who do we have?
Hi. My name is Vivian Corthius. I called in earlier and I made a prepared statement. I would like to answer your question about barriers to public safety.
Yes, go ahead.
So again, My name is Vivian Corthius. I am the Chief Executive Officer for the Association of Village Council Presidents in Bethel, Alaska. That's where our headquarters are. Our tribes live on the Yukon River, Kuskokwim River, and Bering Sea coast. AVCP is a consortium of 56 tribes. We meet on an annual basis. 4 years ago, our tribes identified public safety as the #1 issue for our region. I would like to summarize my testimony that I presented to the President's Law Enforcement Working Group about from 2 weeks ago. And one thing that I'd like to pass on to this for your information is that we were asked the same question when we testified in front of the President's Law Enforcement Commission, and we brought forward three recommendations. The first recommendation that we brought forward was that tribes, especially in rural Alaska, where we have a declared public safety emergency, a crisis, a law enforcement crisis declared by AG Barr when he visited out here last summer. Our first recommendation is that appropriate funding be given to tribes to adequately fund public safety in every community in rural Alaska. The second recommendation that we brought forward was that tribes receive the appropriate training dollars that all of our tribes need to train local law enforcement, and we want that training to be done here in Alaska, in rural Alaska specifically. And then third, we want to address tribal jurisdiction to where we have all the appropriate jurisdiction that tribes enjoy and operate in our communities. So that answers the question that you posed. What were some of the obstacles and what are some of the recommendations specifically for law enforcement? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else that from law enforcement or working in services, anyone out there?
Hi, this is Corey.
Hi.
Hello, I'm finally through.
Go ahead. Good.
I'm from Barrow, Alaska, and we're a small community. I work for our tribal government as the juvenile program coordinator, so I run the wellness court, the juvenile healing to wellness court here that we have. As far as what OJJDP can do for us, we're pretty new in understanding the grants that we have and how to utilize them right now, because for a while there we just didn't have the right, people in the right positions, but now we have a pretty solid team in just tackling a bunch of these services that we can provide for our community. And I think that going off from what one of the speakers from Bethel said is, a site visit would be great. We can keep in contact with that just so you can see where this funding is going to or what we would like to do with it. Because culture, I believe, is so embedded in our community up here in a way that is restorative and can provide a lot of healing for our tribal members. So that's something we would like to focus our funding on, is for more culturally appropriate activities. And I think that if we could get that sometime in the near future, I think it would be a lot of help to us in, helping with understanding the grant work and all the logistics of it, the writing in it, what we can use with it, I think that would be great for us up here in Barrow.
Thank you for those comments. Well, we're drawing to the end of our time here for the second section of the consultation. And again, I really want to encourage everyone to submit comments. We have so many people on the line and so little time to really be able to talk to everybody and get your input. I think that this is, it's really an important first step, I think, in opening dialogue up. And I think that we have an opportunity here. OJJDP is asking that word NATO. They're saying, we're asking for your help. What can we do? And I think it's really important for us to take this opportunity to speak up and provide the input so that we're all going in the same direction in terms of trying to improve outcomes for our kids and to change that trajectory. And so I know that we're all going to the same goal. So really submit your written comments behind us, and also if you have ideas for improving the process. Again, this is new. I think we're all adjusting to the virtual world. So I think this is a great first start. So at this point, I want to thank everyone again for spending this time with us. And I'm going to turn it over to Audrey, who has another song that she's going to gift us with, and then Administrator Hart will close us out for the day. Audrey?
All right, thank you. I also just want to thank everybody who joined us online today, and hope you got some more insights about how OJJ can better support you and your tribes. And so the song that I'll be singing for the closing is a blessing song. And it's a Navajo song, and it was composed by Jay Begay. And I just want to sing this song to kind of help everybody go on their way and hope that we can all...
Yeah, I think, Audrey, that's why I said, I think I'm having a little bit of trouble.
Can you guys hear me?
You're cutting out just a little bit. I don't know if it's the audio or the video feed there, but.
Oh, okay.
But we
I
can hear you now.
Audrey.
Yes.
Okay. Does it seem all right now? Okay. All right, so I'll sing this song and then we can hand it over to Karen for the closing. Hey, hey, oh, yeah. Hey, hey, way, oh, way, oh, way, oh, you, way, na, hey, oh. Shit, I did. Na shag oh shit on ilod oh you na heyo ta question ha jova inisin you na heyo ein yo ein we oh you na heyo shit adin na shag oh shit on ilod oh you na heyo ta question ha joba inisin you na heyo ein yo ein we oh you na heyo shit adin ned ago nid hon ilod oh you na heyo ta question ha jobani hitsin you na heyo.
Thank you, Audrey, and thank you, Jed
Right,
Wasick. Thank you both for your facilitation of our meeting today. It was just such an honor that you agreed to serve us in this capacity. I also want to just extend a special thanks to each and every one of you who shared your thoughts and feedback, your ideas for us. It's so valuable. It'll be just extremely helpful to us as we go forward. If you didn't have an opportunity to share your thoughts today, or if something comes to you, if this triggers some thinking and sometime later you want to share some additional feedback or different feedback with us, please do that. It's not just during this phone call, but we're going to leave the comment period for this open for 60 days. So we would just greatly appreciate your written comments. Feel free to submit them by August 25th. That's the 60-day, the close of the 60-day period. And I believe the site is provided somewhere in your consultation materials, but it's OJJDP Tribal Consultation at ojp.usdoj.gov. Please just submit us any of your comments. We would love to hear from you. My sincere hope is that this is not the end of anything, that this is in fact just the beginning of a lot of great conversation and great consulting and just great relationship building going forward, because OJJDP is blessed to have people that are purely committed to trying to improve the lives of Native youth and working with the tribes, and we just want to help. We want to be useful to you in every way we can find to be. So please feel free to contact us at any time, and we look forward to any additional written comments that you have for it. And I think that's all we have. Are we done for the day? Judge Wawasik, is that everything?
I think it is. We've got about 3 minutes to our closing when they pull the hook on us. But again, thank you everyone for being with us. And I think that it's really important as part of this process that we also get input from you about how these consultations go in the future. I think that really consultation, it's an important that it's a two-way street, and that that we're able to, as tribes, provide that input. And so if there's ways that the process could be improved, I'm sure that Administrator Harp would like to hear about that too, because I think this is, it's all about our kids, and it's about changing the trajectory for them and how we can work together to improve those outcomes in the future. So Audrey, I don't know if you have any final words that you wanted to share with anyone.
I just want to thank everybody who was able to put on this call and everybody who was able to participate. I know we didn't get to everybody, but I hope you all can put down your comments and whatever questions you have. And I hope we can all just take in whatever we learned today and hopefully use this information to better support our Native youth.
I think we can end a minute early or 2 minutes early if we need to.
Miigwech, we all get out of class early. Take care, everyone. Miigwech.
Take care. Be well. Be healthy. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you.